Hello and welcome. This is JudyAdele, and I am here to do a music reaction video. Today we have a request from Peter Dubois, and I don't know what the song is. What I do know is that this is an artist that was in the Tim Minchin Opera House celebration video, and that's all I know. So let's check it out. And thanks for Peter for the request.
Gather round, people, and I'll tell you a story. 200 years of history that's falsified. British invaders that we remember as heroes. Are you ready to tell the other side? We start our story in 1493 with a piece of paper called the Doctrine of Discovery, invoked by Pope Alexander VI. Without this good Christian, our story don't exist.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
Captain James Cook, he boarded a fleet, and he was armed with the Doctrine of Discovery. The same tactics were used by Columbus. It's how today Australia claims terra nullius. 'Cause on that paper, the Pope did write that you're only human if you've been saved by Christ. And if there are no Christians in sight, the land you stumble on becomes your God-given right.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
Is that your Lord? 'Cause that's invasion. That's the destruction of 500 nations. The genocide of entire populations, which planted the seeds for the stolen generation and grew into my people's mass incarceration. Now we pass trauma through many generations. The Lord can't discover what already existed. For 200 years, my people have resisted.
From little things.
Okay. I love this, and appreciate this. And just, God, I mean, just the first thing, right? Like the whole history that's falsified. And it's just so hard to take. I don't know when this hit me, but I was like so mad at myself when I had this, and just goes to show how important accurate education is for kids, because you kind of go through the flow of, I'll get to why I'm not mad at myself in a second. I promise I'm getting there. You go through the flow of that sort of, people are educating you and you kind of trust them. And I was hearing this come from a whole different thing of somebody talking about that, of like the whole, look, I was a kid, kind of talking about being, indoctrinated by our school systems, and how we learn to do life, and how you as a child, you kind of had this assumption often that whoever is teaching you, right, that they're the people you're supposed to trust and learn from, and therefore you kind of take things, I mean, we all question certain things in our lives, right? Like, it's always interesting to think, what did I think about that I really critically thought about as a child, and what are the things I let go, blow past me? And this is the thing that makes me mad at myself, is the fact that I'm like, how did I miss the fact while sitting in school? And I know I'm not alone in this, because if I wasn't, this would have been a different conversation. The whole concept of, Columbus discovered America. And how did and didn't think about the fact that, yeah, okay, Columbus discovered a land that he didn't know that they named America, but there was all these people there, and they were kind of there first. And like, I just, like, makes me mad that that I didn't like process that and think about that more critically and like get mad about it. And I'm curious to know again if I kind of did in some way. I know that I didn't fully. I absolutely know that I did not have a massive like critical opening, but did my mind like think about any of that and kind of like, well, wait a minute, there are people there, and I know a lot of it's the flavor of how they teach, that Columbus comes to the New World, and it's the New World. It's not his New World, right? And it didn't, and then these savages, right? And it just makes me so angry when I think about education and how I just, it's just disgusting. I'm sorry, I think it's disgusting. I don't know, it'd be fascinating to like go to school now and hear what they teach and hear how it's taught and hopefully taught differently. But this is delightful. I know so little about Australian history. We can't do our own history well. It sounds like Australia couldn't either. So we're all trying to figure it out. But I'm just appreciate this. And I've heard some interesting stories through my life about the Australian Aborigines. And I've always just been fascinated because those stories are told differently than the stories of our own native people. And I feel like I sometimes maybe even learned a little bit more about some of the history of Australia. Not so much the history, but the people, the Aborigines in my life before I learned about like the native populations in how they still exist and how we ignore them horribly. Okay, back on track. This is just really cool in a sad way.
Through many generations, the Lord can't discover what already existed. For 200 years, my people have resisted.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
The war's continued since Captain James Cook. And this side of history you don't write in your books. You don't want the truth and you don't want to listen. But how can you stomach Australia's contradiction? Cause we went to war in 1945. We were allies against a terrible genocide. And I know it's uncomfortable, but the irony I see is that you fall for them, but you don't fight for me.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
We should move on. Move on to what? I still remember. Have you forgot that Vincent Langari knew others were rising? Gurindji inspired us to keep on fighting. So call it Australia. Go on, call it what you should move on.
I'm sorry, what he said of the whole we should move on, right? And I think about that, in my own country, in the US, of like, okay, that's the past. Your racism, slavery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All those things are in the past, right? And then the next sentence, be proud of your heritage and get in touch with your history of, typically more of the white person history, right? And it's like, okay, well, so have the black people, but we don't like that. We don't like that shining in our faces, and being reminded. And I guess we're only supposed to look at the positives. I don't know. Anyway, this is painful and appreciated. Well done, sir.
Move on to what? I still remember. Have you forgot that Vincent Langari knew others were rising? Gurindji inspired us to keep on fighting. So call it Australia. Go on, call it what you like. I just call it how I see it, and I see genocide. Now that you hear me, can you understand? There will never be justice on our stolen land.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
This is the story of so-called Australia, but this is the story of so much more. How power and privilege cannot move my people. We know where we stand. We stand in our law.
From little things, big things grow. 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 From little things, big things grow.
From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
Since 1991, 441 Indigenous Australians have died in custody. They're casualties of a war that never ended. But we are not yet defeated. Always was. Always will be. Sovereignty was never ceded.
Oh, there is so much I love about that. I love the storytelling, the spoken word, and I love the backdrop of the music and kind of that new, what am I trying to say here? The tone of the song itself has just a little more of a kind of folks, for lack of a better word, folk kind of music feel to it with the spoken word, which could be seen as more modern. And I love that kind of together, and it just sounds great together, and I love the tone, that just that feeling of just that just listening to that with a bunch of people, it just feels like that whole you just be in such energetic unison. It's just really cool. And the sadness and just kind of the pain and the all of that in the words, and then the both the direction of the chorus of big thing, from little things big things grow, right? Like the kind of how that's gone bad and how that can go good, right? Like the future, the possibilities, the hope in that statement as well is just really cool. Yeah, I love the emotional content, the intensity of his voice, and also the kind of hopefulness of the chorus and the end. I love that they joined together at the end to sing, and then, the last little bit, a ton of energy too. But I like that. That was really well thought out, well put together, great lyrics. And I'm curious, like, okay, in the US, these are things that, we have, like they have the land acknowledgement in the beginning, and I live in northern Minnesota, right, where there's Native Americans everywhere, but just that is a place that we and I feel like we go through periods of this where people do land acknowledgements, and there are places that do not have meetings without land acknowledgements and things like that. So sometimes very there, sometimes not so publicly there, and often kind of forgotten, right? So I'm curious from the perspective, because it'd be fun to transplant myself into an Australian's experience of what that feels like there. And I know it's not, I'm asking for something that isn't really describable, but I'm curious to know if, like, the land acknowledgement, is that something that is common and happens like in a lot of places, or is it kind of one of those things where, yeah, some do, some don't. It gets forgotten, and some people are trying to bring awareness, kind of similar to how it might be here. Yeah, really fascinating song. Love it. Love the lyrics, and just appreciate that little history lesson and just a reminder of the reality of people's histories. So thank you, Peter, for that. And for that awareness of, I know this came from the Sydney Opera House video. I'm curious to know if there was anywhere, if they were similar time-wise. And the Sydney Opera House is such a fascinating place. Like, okay, so I'm curious. Somebody tell me, he's standing up on the top of the thingamaboopers. I'm sure they have a technical name. Like, is that something as a regular person you can do, like, as a tourist? I feel like this is like inappropriate to ask in this video, but I am so curious. Is that something that you can do? Is that like something you can like pay to do as a tourist? Or is that just something that it's only really a special thing to do? I'm just curious. I love that he's up there doing that. I don't know. I think it's a beautiful spot. And yeah, the imagery in the video is also really awesome. Not only his and the vantage point and then behind him with Australia, but just the other video pieces they put in there as well. So thank you again. This is really cool, really depressing, and really cool. Thank you all for watching along and hanging out with me. So appreciative of that. And thanks for checking out. If you're new to the channel, welcome, and check out some of the other videos that we have. Okay. On that note, take good care and enjoy the music. Have a good one. Bye-bye.